Alright everyone, welcome back to our YouTube channel, and we are back with a new YouTube video on a new topic, that is APIs. So what does API stand for? Application Programming Interfaces. So whether you are new to this IT world, or whether you want to upskill in this in these technologies, so learning about APIs is very crucial in this day and age, as we live in an interconnected digital world. So I'm very excited to walk you down through what is API, how to kickstart your API journeys, and from where all you have to learn, and yes, how can you implement it in your day-to-day life. So this will help you with your day-to-day projects or day-to-day work. Let's move on. So this is an overview of what I'm gonna discuss in this video. So what is an API? How do API work? Type of APIs, real world API examples, API authentication, hands-on demos, and resources to get started. So let's without wasting any time, let's quickly deep dive in this video. So what is an API exactly? So API stands for Application Programming Interface. So what essentially API is a set of rules or a set of program which allows applications to communicate between themselves. So if for example this is an application A and application B, so if you want to leverage each other's functionalities, we won't just go on and integrate the entire code into each other, but this bridge is what is an API. So it enables software integration without just directly deep diving into the internal code of the other app. So it standardizes the access to the functionalities and the data of the two between these two apps. So as this will be much more simpler for me to explain with an analogy. So say for example you go out with your friends to a restaurant. Okay, so here you are the customer essentially, and in IT world you are the client. So you sit down at the table, and you want food to be served. So what will you do? You won't directly go to the kitchen and start cooking for yourself, of course, right? So that would be just create a chaos in that restaurant. So essentially what will you do is you will call up the waiter and give the order that you want to place for your food. So here in this scenario, the waiter is the API. So further on, you give when you gave the request to the waiter, he will further communicate it to the kitchen and essentially to the chefs. So what kitchen in this IT term will be the system. So this will be the application from where you want your data to be captured. So what essentially then the waiter does is, after the food is done, when I mean prepared by the chefs, the waiter will come back to you with your food. So here it is again the waiter is the API, and whatever you requested, he has came back to you with that item or that request. So I hope this analogy is it's as simpler as straightforward as possible. I've kept it as straightforward as possible and hope you understood it. So let's move on to a bit complex diagram. So what this is the basic concept what of I have explained to you right now. So how do applications communicate? That is through a standardized interface. So between application A and application B, there is a API, that is a standardized code between them. So when application A wants something from application B, they will request it through API, and further on the API will then request go to application B, provide your request, and then application B will provide its response to the API, and that response is then carry forwarded to application A. So it's the middleman. So API is essentially the middleman between two applications. Alright, let's move on. So why do APIs matter? So it as I mentioned, it enables integration between two different systems, then improve development efficiency. That is, we don't need to reinvent everything. That is, suppose my application is about a food business. That is, I provide when users come onto my app and order food. So that's my specialty. But handling the payments is not my specialty. So why do I need to create my own portal for payments? So that some other app will do it for me, and I just have to leverage its functionality. So that is third. Then third, create new business opportunities, allow specialization of services, and power the modern web and mobile applications. So this is the interconnection between this digital world which we can leverage, which the users leverage it and provide us with more better opportunities to and more better functionalities in this world. All right. So next we come to the HTTP methods, that is essentially in these APIs what all calls we can make. So there are four major HTTP methods that we use. That is the get, that is retrieve data. Essentially it is just read only. That is we ask what all data we require and the system just provides us. The API just goes to the application and provides us with that data. Next is post, that is create new data. So this is a bit more enhanced version of get, that is we provide data from our end as well, and then this data is carry forwarded by the API to the application, and some changes are made over there, and or else a new data that is created for us. Essentially for example a form system, when you go on a website and fill in your details, and when you press submit, a post request is done. That is your details are carry forwarded to the application, and the application stores the data for you. So that is a post request. Put or patch, that is the your data is already present in the application, you just have to say rename your sorry, change your email ID or change your phone number. So this is, you don't need to create new data, just update the existing data. That is when put or patch HTTP methods come into picture. And last one is straightforward delete, that is you have to delete the data from this application. All right, let's move on. So essentially what all I explained, let's just recap it quickly so it gets much more easier for you. So suppose this is a client application, so it will request the data from the API point, and we discuss the HTTP methods. So it might be out of these four methods that the client application has requested. So it will just query the database. Once it got its desired output from the database, it will just carry forward the data forward and give the response back to the client application. And after this response is completed, we get status codes for it. So if in mostly in get API responses, we get 200. If everything went well, we get a 200 response. Or else if in a post request, we get 201. That is when something is created in the application. 400 comes out when it's a bad request, that is when API was able to reach the database, but there was some parameters or some data from your end that was not sufficient, or some bad data was sent out. That is when 400 bad request comes out. 404 is straightforward, that the database could not be found, that the URL API endpoint that you provided was not found by the API, and so 404 was returned by the. And 500, that is a server error, that is you did everything right from your end, just internally at that secondary, that is the database, something went wrong. So that is where 500 status code comes in. All right, so this is a sample of an response from an API. So you can see generally API responses come into JSON format. So if you are not aware about JSON, it's all right. You can go on YouTube or go on Google and do a basic introductory watch a basic introductory video about JSON. You will understand it. So essentially what I will give an explanation in a nutshell, that JSON is key and value paired data structure. So here you can see the weather. Suppose weather is the key, so what are the values of the weather? So there is an array, and the description and the main, that it's given out. So what weather is cloudy, and description scattered clouds. So your temperature same. So this is the key. What's the value? Temperature this is 72.5, humidity 53. Similarly wind, and so on. So we get nested keys and values inside the system. All right, let's get our hands dirty now, and I will just quickly show you an API call, how it's made, and now how the data is rendered. So let's go to this link. I'll just give you an explanation. So this is an open weather platform. It is very good in providing live weather updates, and they have their own API dashboard, API documentation. So every application that is not necessary will provide this API publicly. Few are private and few needs to be subscribed. That is you pay some price and use their APIs to integrate into your system. So few functionalities of this open weather app are free, so you can just create your account over here and just go to your details. So this here you get an API key. I will explain you later what API key, why API key matters. So we'll just explore the API documentation first. So as here it is mentioned that it is included in both free and paid subscriptions, so we'll refer to this documentation. Suppose here is the API documentation. So in every uh, application which has public API documentations, you will find such pages, and you will get such data, how to make an API call current weather. Suppose for example here call current weather. So here they provide examples and the structured format for it. So you can get this for every application. So I have just copied this API call from for your reference. So I'll just explain it to you. So I picked it up from this documentation page, that is apiweather.org. This is the standard. So, and what they have said, this provide the city's name and app ID. Now this app ID is my API case, which is used, which we saw over here, which is used to authenticate myself. Means there has to be some kind of security, right, between these transactions. So I provide this API key and just hit enter. So you can see this API got me some data from the database and provided to me. This came out in the JSON format, exactly how we saw over here. This is the in the like how the example response was. You get it over here. So this I know this is not quite straightforward, but we can derive data using some programming languages, and we can use it to or leverage it according to our needs. Alright, let's move on. So this was a get API call example. Let's go move on to a next application, Postman, which is now Postman is a free to use popular tool used to test APIs. That is, you can use API calls, you can make API calls for free over there, and all types of calls, and it gives a structured format of responses, and it allows you to save and organize your API calls, then test out various functionalities, modify those functionalities, etc. So I'll just quickly dive in that application. So this is an Postman dashboard, how it looks like. So I have already created a app request for you. So this is the same request that we picked up from earlier. So here you suppose I'll create a new request. So after creating a new request, we just copy the link that we had already. So here you can see the parameters automatically get generated for us. That is, what is the here Q, that is the ID of the city that came out as London, and app ID, which was our API key, that also came out. And as soon as we hit send, we get a structured format of the response of this API, that is the same we saw on the browser. And as I mentioned, the status code, if a successful data is returned, then we get 200 status code on that, and this data further can be leveraged. Okay, you can use it in your applications to as you wish. All right, let's move on. So I'll not deep dive into this topic. So these are just quickly I'll refer through what are the types of APIs. So this is the most common used APIs, that is the web or REST APIs, which we saw right now in the examples. They use simple HTTP protocols and return into JSON or XML format, like the one we saw right now. These are SOAP APIs. These are more structured and XML based protocols, and these are not publicly used, but most of the big enterprises use in their environments. These are the third example is the library based APIs, which are used in programming languages, and mostly these APIs are used internally within their code libraries. And the fourth one is operating system APIs. These are the ones which are hard coded in the OS, which and they use internally to leverage the OS functionalities. All right, let's move on. So I want to discuss one important topic, that is authentication and security. Why APIs especially needs authentication? as these data sometimes can be quite vulnerable or very sensitive data. So before using these APIs, it can be like API is a very powerful tool if used properly, or a dangerous one as well if fell in the wrong hands. So you have to be very cautious when using APIs, and ensure that all the security measures are taken care of. So that is why we need authentication, so to identify who is using the APIs and leveraging the API functionalities, track usage and apply rate limits, ensure security and monetize access. So this is why authentication is necessary. And these are some common authentication methods. The first one we saw in the weather app, that is the API keys. It's simple string which is unique to you, and you just have to provide it as a request during the API call. Then OAuth. Now OAuth is a bit complex authentication method. For example, the most common example I can give you is most of the applications provide you with login as Google functionality. So that's a OAuth function. So that is, it goes back to Google, picks up the whatever data about you is necessary for them, like your name, your email ID and everything, and then you are authorized to use the resources. JWT are some JSON tokens. So these are encoded tokens, and it's like a digital signature, digitally signed tokens which you can use between these API, between while making the API calls. And fourth one is the bit basic, that is the basic username and password to access the application directly. So this is basic authentication. So finally, let's see a simple web integration. So I'm just building up on the weather app. Have prepared an app for this. So when I click on get weather for New York, I just directly get current temperature in New York is 52.61. Conditions are overcast and humidity is 73%. I'll just quickly run you through this application code. So as you can see, this is simple HTML page. The title is simple weather. We'll just compare it side by side, so it's better for you to know. Then we created a button, that is get weather, and then this gave an ID for it. So this get weather is triggered and the script is run further. So what we have done is we had added a listener. As soon as the button is clicked, just go and fetch through this and get some details from this API link which we used earlier in both the browser and the Postman. And after that we got the response and we stored this response inside a response variable, and then we extracted the data. And after extracting the data, we just got the current temperature from that, like JSON response, and stored it in the temperature conditions. We stored in the description, humidity is stored in the, and then we just printed it out for our purpose. So this is how we got current temperature of New York City. So this is how you can leverage these APIs into anything and everything you can think about in your applications. Alright, so let's go back to our slideshow. So some few real world API examples I can give out is payment processing like Stripe or PayPal, like how online when you go out shopping. So these apps don't have their own portals, but instead they have integrated PayPal or Stripe. So that by that way you can do the payments and place your order. So the second example, maps and locations. So for example, Google Maps and Mapbox, like how for example on food delivery apps or Uber apps, they integrate Google Maps with them because they don't create their own maps, just they leveraged through APIs the Google Maps. The social media integration, like how we can see now everything is interconnected through Facebook, WhatsApp, Twitter, everything. Similarly, weather data, like weather app we just saw, e-commerce websites and communication websites. Alright, so coming to the end of this video, I'm providing a free API resources to you. So like public APIs, the ones I showed you was Open Weather Map, NASA API, Pokemon API. So for JSON placeholders, just for testing out how API works. And this is a fake API for testing. So this site is good for you to, that is JSON placeholder. Rapid API, marketplace with many free tier APIs. So you can check that out as well. And tools, the one I was showed you was Postman. Then another one is Swagger or GitHub's API. So I will drop in links of every resource in the description section. You can go check it out. Hope this video was enlightening and you liked it, like the content. So please mention in the comment section how what you think about it, and see you in the next one. Thank you.